So welcome, everybody. The idea today is to sit with some images that don't immediately conjure up stuff for us, and see what comes up for us. It's really going to be an experiment because I don't know what's going to happen. But I thought that I wanted to start with this because I've been sitting and kind of wondering whether this is really the right thing to do at this time when the world is burning. And there's a part of me that feels like that's what needs to be spoken to. And there is another part of me that thinks this is exactly what we need to do so we can sort of gather up the parts of us that are the deepest so we can respond to what's happening in our own way, in the world, in our own lives, and so on. So I thought we'll start with one of John O'Donohue's poems. It's a little bit long, but that's kind of the idea today, is to stay and linger. And this poem is called For One Who's Exhausted. All right, so I'm going to read this and let it wash over you. For one who is exhausted. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now becomes laborsome events of will. Weariness invades your spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out. You are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You have been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drove you has relinquished. There is nothing else to do now but rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first, your thinking will darken and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses. Open up to the small miracles you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells far within slow time. So today's invitation is to that slow time. And we're going to do everything very slow today. And what we will do is I have about 10 minutes of fractal images. And the only thing that accompanies it is very slow drum beat, like the heartbeat when one is at peace. And these are images that are, most of you, I'm sure, have seen fractal images, but they're not conjuring up an object. They're not drawings. They're not cats and dogs and humans and plants, but they may bring those images up for you. So the invitation is really to watch the images and see what words, what thoughts, what feelings come up, and you can take notes. And then we'll see what arose for each of us, and is there a common place that our soul wanted to go with these images. And I guess before we start the video, yes, the invitation is really to watch, to look at the images and to look at what's arising in us physically, emotionally, in terms of words. And we will come back. Does anybody have any questions before we start? It's going to be a longish video, 10 minutes and 8 seconds to be precise. All right, David, we can start the video then. Hmm. Welcome back. And really, as I said, let's see what emerges from us. So, yeah, does anybody feel moved to speak? Yes, Suzica.
It was fascinating, and I have probably 100 words written down about what it invoked, how it felt, what it represented. Um, Spectacular and fascinating and settling while it was exciting, stimulating.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dave, Darren, go.
It was that last part I was going to follow up with that Susie said, that it was settling and yet exciting. That was, I've always found that with fractals, the minute one comes onto the screen, I involuntarily take this very deep breath and I just feel myself grounding down. And yet in the paradox of it, or the polarity of it, I'm also drawn in and excited about it. And this was the first time I've seen straight fractals, and I noticed I did not have the same experience with that I wasn't as drawn in as much with the straight lines, that it's the curves and the fluidity and the intricacies and that I just love getting lost in. And then the biggest surprise, the other big surprise, was the word erotic came up for me, but not in a sexual way, almost sensual. But this was the first time I've ever thought of them as erotic. I mean, I see them as life, as nature, but yeah, so that was a beautiful surprise. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eros is a god, and it's the god that brings us towards life, towards living. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I want to hear some more. Who else wants to say?
I'll say, there was a lot of physical response and some emotional response. And then, and I remember the ones with more black in like the center and stuff, they drew me in. And what I realized was happening in throughout the time was that I think I was dancing with the input of sound and color, and well, as my nervous system was taking them in, I think I began to kind of respond to each one, and it felt like a dance to me.
Mm-hmm.
The response felt like as a color would shift and I would feel myself drawn in or pulled out or in response. And I became sleepy.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sabang. Yeah, hold on 1 second, Philip. I see your hand. Just want to respond to one thing that you said, Sebang, is, or not what you said, but how you moved is very reminiscent of that whirling of the dervish. And I wonder whether that's an image that was alive for you? When you said dance, can you put a few more words around the word dance for how it landed for you?
Sure. Sometimes a dervish, I have a different like a dervish dance feels a little less responsive. I felt like it was a responsive dance. Like the sound and the color were elucidating response from inside me, and I was dancing in response to the stimulation. To me, a dervish dance is well, maybe it's responsive to a sound current, but it's a, in my mind anyway, in my world, it's a little more isolated. This was very shared, like between the images and between my muscular nervous system, you know. That's
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Sebang. And we have some words from Yocasta. I'll read that out, and then Philippa will hear from you. Yocasta says, felt the movement and associations with nature, animals, and animals, she says, like elephants and octopus, and inside of the human body, and the ways it mirrors Earth's body. Thank you, Yocasta. Yes. And Philippa.
I also felt the two senses of being set, but also stimulated, and also the overwhelming sense was just awe. And they're so exquisite. And for several of them, I took a little gasp. They were just so beautiful. And at one point, there was just so much beauty and joy. And then I had this wave of sadness that with so much beauty and joy in the world, how could there be so much pain? And how could we be so unkind? And then I moved back into the images and just wanted to stay within them. And I was almost sad when some of them moved on because they were so beautiful. I wanted to stay there. No, just a little bit longer, please. It was beautiful. They're stunning. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Thank you. And yes, isn't that the question? And isn't that the invitation of how can we sit with this beauty and joy and dance and the heartbreak of the world? And how can we not sit with this thing and still attend to the heartbreak? I don't think we can.
I agree.
Because if we don't feed that soul that then needs to go out and do things, it'll become hard and brittle. So yeah, I mean, for me, that's how my self-dialogue was that's why this is actually the perfect offering at this time. Anyone else wants to speak? Yeah, go ahead, Miles.
Good evening. Thank you for this. I've never spoken Fractal before, so I chose to just notice myself as I received these images, because I know I will be drawn into creating meaning for what I'm seeing and kind of force my vision. And it was an exercise to flow with the shapes without trying to create a program, as it were. So could not help but see Fibonacci sequence within a lot of the spirals. And I've started to ask myself, what is that? Because that is all about balance. That is the equation for perfect balance. And what is that? And how do I see that within that? So that was some thinking going on. And I, as someone else said, I found myself uttering. There was a gasp, and then there was a giggle. I was paying attention to where things connected, to where something that would look like a feather or a wave, and that edge, the layers, where it then started to fall into the spiral, and feel that descending without anxiety, that it is this beautiful journey into the what is. I guess I'll stop there. Thank you.
Actually, don't unmute yourself yet. Question. So this place where the spiral or the feather ends and something else begins, what would be some words if we were to describe that place or feelings?
Susie Mason has it.
Go ahead, Susie.
Letting you off the hook, Miles.
Keeping myself unmuted.
Expansiveness, infinity, containment in some of them, sacred geometry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to answer because I thought you were talking about where I was saying that where they meet up,
Yes.
and I was going to say sinew.
Sinew.
The connectivity.
That's a gorgeous word. The bones and the sinews. Sinews joining the bones. Wow. We use those sinews to make the sacred drum. The word that was conjured up for me when you said that was threshold. So, yeah. Philippa, go.
The word that came to me was pregnant. There's this deep creativity in that little space.
Yeah, pregnancy is definitely one of those images that comes up for me a lot with these.
Yeah.
Birthing, creation, all those words, emanation, but pregnancy, yes.
Emanation is a really nice word for the response. I feel a lot of Shakti and emanation. That's a nice word for my experience.
Anybody?
But also, you know, I think I would say that there is something here that is just outside of logic. It's outside of pain. It's outside. If we're talking about the news and if we're talking about what's happening in the world, it's really nice to go to a place that's images rather, I don't know. I feel I'm going to just think about it for a second while as we're all talking.
Yeah, come back. Come back. I think you have something there.
Yeah, me too.
Who else wants to say maybe some of the words that really were important for you as you were watching?
This is very new for me. I absolutely loved the beat. Hearing it was the one constant. And the fact that it was like the heartbeat, it goes on no matter what. And I also found myself standing back a little bit psychologically to protect myself, because I didn't want to get too attached to anyone, because I knew I would have to let it go.
Huh.
But it would be replaced. I mean, something else would come along. But I felt as though it was a process, not of transformation, but of transforming. That was one of the words I used. It's just constantly evolving. And then there's the beat, and there's the beat. Very comforting, reassuring.
Thank you, Judith. And I'm glad that you spoke about the beat, because there was a lot of thought that went into that pacing. Because I was really hoping that, because these images can, as you say, kind of destabilize you a little bit, draw you into that void, draw you into that creative center, and that kind of that grounding heartbeat could be a counterpoint. And I'm glad that it was a counterpoint for you. Any other thoughts and questions or comments? And then we can move on to a little bit different work. Sebang, do you have more words now?
You know, we just can't be on all the time. At least I can't be just on all the time. And similarly, like sometimes when I'm taking a shower, for instance, like this incredible insight will come when I move away from my focus and I'm just doing something else. And I think that's what that's what's coming to me in watching those. It pulled on a different part of my consciousness, and a more reflective part, a more responsive part, a more spontaneous part, definitely alive in response to each of the images. So I think it's a welcome switch up.
I like switch up. Yeah. Yes. You know, it's interesting. I came to this particular theme partly because I was reading the Islam homework. And for the first time, it really landed in my body. I have known this as a concept, but it landed in my body, the Islamic art, and how this rule against no idolatry, no animals, no birds, no humans being represented, and what that does to the soul, how it lets the soul be free. But there is real mathematical precision in the mosques, in the carpets, in the calligraphy. There's a lot of precision, but it's like we're not a priori getting attached to stories. So I thought that was it really landed for me in a way that it had not landed before. So that's because I'm somebody who loves to make stories with images, and there's beauty in that. But this was a slightly different experience of, you know, some of the words that come up for me are things like mystery and creation and the center. You said pregnant, I wrote womb. And also like cathedral or magical. So maybe the rest of the time, we have 15-ish minutes, Did anybody else have anything else to add to this part? Yeah, go ahead, Susie.
I would like to make jewelry or fabric out of most of the images that you showed us.
Yeah, maybe we'll have a business plan. Darren, yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, I want to, what happens when I look at these, I realize is similar to what happens when I contemplate the universe and the scale of the universe, is that I describe it as my brain short circuits, and then I'm just in a state of awe. And I realize that it's a similar experience that what happens when I look at these is that, as you said, there's mathematical precision in it. There is an order in a way, even though it looks like chaos, but it short circuits my brain so I can just be.
Yes.
And so
yeah,
thanks.
The frontal cortex goes offline. Yep. And it's so important. Yeah. What I'm noticing is that a lot of the words we used to describe these fractals are the words we use to describe God or universe or the great mystery. And I'm just wondering whether we want to, if we want to think of these fractals that we saw as a face of God, face of the divine, how might we speak to that? What might be some words we have around it? Or a movement, or how might our soul be speaking in response to this encounter? Go ahead, Philippa. Bow down. Might also want to raise our arms up. Susie?
Even in that motion, namaste, the divine in me sees the divine in you. My words that I had written down before, mystical, so mysticism, I guess I would switch it to. Definitely divine and unknowing energy and life affirming.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to comment on a word that some people used earlier, the word gasp. And the definition of the word numinous includes that sense of awe and that gasping. Because it's, again, like as Darren said so beautifully, brain gets short-circuited, and what's left is the gasp.
Another very strong image I have is of the whirling dervishes when standing up and arms up. That's the response they bring up in me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
I actually have a movement that I've
Joy
seen
and
that. I'm
wonder,
like, what is going on? I'm like,
ecstasy.
it's this almost like DNA, but then there's this point where it connects, and it's just this, yeah,
Mm.
wrapping
Reminds
engagement.
reminds me of Hermes's caduceus, the two
Yeah.
serpents, and then they meet at the top.
And then that takes me back to DNA and thinking about well,
Mhm.
DNA and the way the chromosomes and everything could be, is fractally, and it just, yeah.
The word that I thought of, Darren, was intertwined.
Yeah, I used swirl as one of my words. Also the night sky, cosmos. Miles, did you have your hand up, or was it just?
I was voguing in my style, but you just had me think of, and I haven't heard the word yet, infinity.
Yes. And one response to infinity is what Judith was saying. Let me step back. It could be too much.
I also had the word wordless because there was a space I got into where there were no words. They were there. They are. They be.
Exactly. And I think, Philippa, that's a really good invitation to hold those words lightly, because we can get married to the words. And that was the whole idea of using fractals. Words help us, but words also limit us. Yeah, no, that's a great caution. Let's not make the words what they're pointing to.
Something about using the object of the senses, like sound, color, and light, to go beyond the senses. Because I think that's what people are describing. And isn't it interesting that we're perceiving sound and color and light, and then having an experience or that's kind of beyond them all.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And isn't that the function of all practice, all ritual, all arts, to point towards what cannot be named, cannot be spoken, cannot be tied down in a package. I think they're both important, both the effort to reach there and the knowledge that we can't, right? At least for me, because there's something really juicy, there's something really delicious about trying to find the word, knowing that it'll never fit.
I agree.
You know what I can do? I can share my screen and just show you some of the images that we saw, and we can just look at a few. All right.
That would be lovely.
Where did you find them?
They are mine.
That
I
you,
make them.
oh, they're amazing.
Okay, and let me.
Do you use them in your soul cards?
Sometimes. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to move. Flames.
Can you move your cursor?
I don't have a cursor on. Oh, do I?
It's gone.
It's gone? Okay. I can stop whenever people have something you want to talk about.
It's like dancing with the universe.
Indeed.
Yeah, that was the one.
This one? What was it?
Well, it feels, yeah, it looked like it was some sort of arena, you know, from above. That there's this stadium seating or some sort of, that drew me right into the center of it.
I mean, many of these remind me of aerial views of the landscape of the earth, you know, when you that higher perspective. I mean, I'm seeing rivers and eddies and deserts and
Or cells. Or somebody's commented earlier inside the, like a bodyscape on the inside. It feels like that too. Like,
Yeah. I can stop if you want. There's all kinds. It's probably amazing. Okay, I'll stop at this point. Any more thoughts?
The one thought that I love is that they are life itself. They're the mathematical formula, if it will, of life. In that you see it in so many spirals in nature and in the mitochondria in the cells. And it's like we're seeing life force. It's a whole new level.
Yes. And you're looking at a fractional dimension, which is a very, very interesting concept. Darren, you
say more about
it is. But in that fraction, there is everything.
Can you say more about that?
So basically, the way the fractal works is you are looking at, so we have 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, but there's also fractional dimensions in between. And one of the ways that you can imagine a fractional dimension is if you look at the coastline of a continent and you're looking from very far up, like from a spaceship, you're going to see straight lines or curved lines. But as you get closer, it's going to have more and more and more jaggedness because you're entering those fractional dimensions. So it's very, actually the way this whole system works is very interesting. It's an iterative, it's basically an equation where you're changing it again and again, and you're just varying one thing. And depending on that one thing being varied, it has a different look every time, but it's also has this repeating behavior. It's called Mandelbrot set, but I don't want to go geeky on it, but it's very cool.
You can cut a cauliflower or broccoli and see them there. That's a fractal.
A snail. A tree, a lightning is a fractal. A lightning strike is a fractal. The tree roots are fractal. Our blood vessels are fractal. Our trachea to the branches in your lungs. And we've been talking so much about lungs with COVID. It's fractal.
This was a wonderful offering. Thank you so much for putting it together for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, before we close, just one word from everybody as sort of a checkout. What am I carrying with me?
I'm
A
carrying-
yearning.
A yearning.
Excuse me.
Sorry. Awe.
Awe.
Movement.
Movement.
Fascination.
Fascination.
I'm stuck on my, I'm going to say divinely erotic.
Divinely erotic. For me, it's I'm debating between mystery and magic. So I'll take the facilitator's prerogative to put 2.
Mm.
With branches
bank-
to more, I'm sure.
Sebang, for you, it's like breathing out, the exhalation.
No, I'll go for ecstatic.
Ecstatic. All right, dear ones. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
showing
Thank you.
Sushmita, thank you so much.
Thank you so
This
much.
is wonderful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.